ready for some more history? Let's look at page 31 in our reader book. And we're going to have one page today for your assignment. It's going to be work text page 15, but you're going to finish that at the end of this section. This is not going to be as long of a lesson as it was yesterday. Yesterday was the beginning of a new chapter, so sometimes those are a little bit long, and I apologize for having been so long. All right, let's look at page 31. You see that very tall man there? I bet you know who that is. Abraham Lincoln. Oh, Honest Abe was his nickname. All right, so healing the nation. Remember, the nation had to heal physically, socially, and politically. So we're going to read about the Reconstruction, continue reading about that, and Abraham Lincoln. Now I'm gonna read the pages. It's just pages 31 to 33. As I read, I want you to find out who became president after something happened to Abraham Lincoln, and what was it that happened to Abraham Lincoln. Be careful. All right, here we go. Page 31. Read along with me. As Reconstruction began, Americans faced many questions. The biggest question was about the states that used to be the Confederacy, or the Confederate States of America. Before the Civil War, these states had voted to secede from the nation. Now that the war was over, were these states still part of the United States? If they were not, then how could they rejoin? Americans considered who was in charge of making that decision. Could the president accept these states? Did Congress get to decide? The confusion about who was in charge made Reconstruction hard. At this time, the president seemed to be in favor of what most congressmen wanted, but both the president and Congress wanted to be in charge of the process of Reconstruction. As the Civil War ended, President Lincoln wanted to be sure the country healed quickly. He said that all Americans should bind up the nation's wounds, to care for him who shall have borne the battle, and for his widow and his orphan. Lincoln also wanted to be sure that the freedmen were treated fairly. He hoped that all Americans, black and white, would enjoy a peaceful and successful country. Turn to page 32. Let's look at a new president, and we're going to find out what happened. Sadly, President Lincoln was assassinated. On the evening of April the 14th, 1865, Lincoln took his wife to see a play. The Civil War was coming to an end. Since the main Confederate army had surrendered, the Union's victory seemed sure. The president could finally enjoy a night of relaxation. It seemed as though victory was almost complete, but John Wilkes Booth, an actor who liked the South, burst into Lincoln's theater box and shot him. Lincoln's vice president, Andrew Johnson, became president. Johnson was very angry about Lincoln's assassination. He promised to punish the people who did it. Many Americans believed the leaders of the Confederacy were to blame for Lincoln's death. Johnson said the leaders of the South would pay for their crimes. Johnson believed that he should be in charge of the Reconstruction. Most of the men in Congress hoped Johnson would do a good job, and these men were from the North and the members of the Republican Party. They believed that leaders of the Confederacy should be punished for fighting against the Union. When Johnson talked with these congressmen, they thought he agreed with their ideas. Instead, Johnson treated the Southerners mildly. He pardoned almost all the Confederate leaders. He didn't make rules to protect the freedmen. He let Southern states hold elections to choose representatives to send to Congress. These representatives were often men who had supported the Confederacy. Johnson claimed to be doing what Lincoln wanted. While most white Southerners were happy with Johnson's choices for Reconstruction, many freedmen suffered. Southern states passed harsh laws. These laws seemed to be set up to make the freedmen almost slaves again. Few people in the North knew about the new Southern laws. Although slavery had ended, most freedmen didn't seem much better off than before they were emancipated or freed from slavery. Instead, Reconstruction under President Johnson seemed to help mainly the Southerners. So that wasn't a good thing. That it doesn't sound like he was doing what Abraham Lincoln wanted, but we don't know. What would happen in your home if nobody was in charge? Might be a scary thought. I fear to think what would happen in my home if somebody was not in charge. What was it that President Lincoln wanted to happen? Basically, he wanted a peaceful America for everybody. He wanted everybody to come back and live in peace. But what happened to him? He was assassinated. Very sad. How did the new president, President Johnson, feel about Lincoln's assassination? He was angry. How did most of the congressmen think President Johnson felt about their new ideas for Reconstruction? They thought he was in agreement. But that's not really what happened. How did Johnson disappoint those men in Congress? He started treating the South like they were the bomb diggity. Why did he do this? He said, well, this is what Abraham Lincoln would want us to do. What did the South do that hurt the freedmen? Do you remember what they did? They passed harsh laws that hurt the freedmen. Look at that chart at the top of page 33. On the left side, these were laws for the slaves. And on the right, these were the new Southern laws for the freedmen. Remember, the freedmen were freed slaves. Look at the laws for the slaves. Slaves must work under a master. Slave contract gives the master ownership of the slave and his family. Children of slaves are also slaves and belong to the master. And slaves have no choice of living quarters. They're told where they have to live. Now, look at the new laws for the freedmen in the South. Freedmen must have a job with an employer. Work contract requires a freedman along with his family to work for an employer. Children of freedmen can be apprenticed without their parents' permission, and freedmen cannot live in some towns. So these were the new laws that they passed. They were very similar to the slave laws. But I need you to understand freedmen were also not treated fairly in the North either. And for some reason, a lot of books and textbooks just tell you how badly they were treated in the South. And they leave out how badly they were treated in the North. But they were not treated much better in the North. But maybe you'll read something that tells you the truth later on. Okay, your assignment today is to do page 15. You have to circle N if it applies to the North, S if it applies to the South, and F if it applies to the freedmen. Use your book and also use that list that we made yesterday on page 14. And I don't think I'm going to grade this page today, but I would like to see it so that I can check it. Okay? That's all for today.